an abbreviated version of her presentation on IoT in the boardroom.
Sorry, I double act. Sorry, I just have to drink a little bit of water. So we're going to do this much shorter than 15 minutes. I was asked to talk to you about how boardrooms are thinking about Internet of Things and IoT and how important it is to them. Just as a background, I have served on a number of boards. Currently, I serve on 4 public boards, 4 different countries, 4 different countries, 4 different industries. And also through AKnowledge advisory services, we work with a lot of large companies and boards thinking about IoT and the strategy they want to have, as well as obviously we work with a lot of startups. So one of the things that if we go to the next slide, I don't actually have possibility to move the slides myself. I do? Okay, sorry. Oops. When you think about boardrooms today, the priorities that they have are actually the biggest priority, whether we like it or not, is exercising risk oversight and compliancy. So it continues to be extremely important. Forget about Sarbanes-Oxley. I mean, it continues to be one of the most important themes, fortunately or unfortunately in some ways, in boardrooms. But there are 4 other topics which are technology related, which are extremely important and really come just behind that risk oversight and compliancy. One is facing cybersecurity risks. One of the things that we didn't discuss in the last panel because we ran out of time, cybersecurity actually was the way IoT security is today. Cybersecurity was like that about a decade ago or 15 years ago. Some people had some things, but people weren't believing in any issues. And today it's completely different. Some of the trends we discuss is happening in cybersecurity in a sense that large companies are thinking like, gee, I am buying my cybersecurity tools and services from 80 different vendors, and I got to consolidate that. So that's one trend we're seeing. And second is everybody is spending a lot of money on cybersecurity, and it's becoming part of the company's culture, as well as putting it into, like, anybody wants to do business with you have to show that they actually have a very sound cybersecurity strategy and tools in place. So it's very interesting, but that continues to be still, cybersecurity continues to be an extremely important theme. The other theme is threat of disintermediation, which is related to IoT, but it's not one and the same, because depending on industry and company, there are a lot of threat of disintermediation outside of IoT. And then really the disruptive element of IoT is an important topic that every board, even the ones that are not necessarily directly impacted by it, but they will be indirectly impacted by it, are considering. So good news is awareness around IoT is every boardroom. And the terminology of IoT, believe it or not, some boards didn't, 2-3 years ago, people did not know the terminology IoT. They didn't discuss it, the board members. But today, I would say probably at 90% level, especially large companies, public large companies know about it. Which brings us to the last point, which is cultural shift in an age of disruption. So, the whole IoT, talking about culture, it's also very culture-oriented because it's not just about the strategy, but once you have the strategy, how do you change your organization to understand how to use IoT? So when, sort of the IoT dilemma and opportunities for C-suite and boards actually is threefold. Basically, they think about the value shifts, which are to the right of this slide, which I know you've heard these terminologies already in the last day and a half, which is the value is shifting from hardware to software, from product to service, from on the premise to on the cloud, from data to actionable workflows, and from disruptive to predictive to prescriptive, which is one of the speakers, the AI speaker, talked about as well. So that value shift is happening. Boards are generally conscious about it. But how they think about what they have to do falls into three categories. I start with the category at the bottom to the left, which is providing higher customer service through efficient and real-time operations and processes. This is how really IoT has started. So one of the most advanced or most developed IoT sectors is enterprise transportation, so trucking industry, for example, asset tracking, trailer tracking, construction equipment tracking. And really, when you think about this, there are two things that they're trying to do with it. One is to improve customer service. When your customer calls and says, look, my parcel hasn't arrived, my trailer hasn't arrived, you say, oh, your trailer is en route, and here what it is. So you basically get sort of transit or supply chain visibility. And second is you can make your assets much more productive. Your trailer now, you can have faster transit time, therefore you can increase the utilization rate of that trailer or that truck, in-cab or tractor. Second part that people think about IoT is really creating a disruptive customer intimacy through connected relationships. So, the dishwasher example was very interesting, but, putting an IoT hat on myself, we believe that's important. We believe that the dishwasher should be connected because you do want to know cycle time. You do want to know, oh my God, this dishwasher is going to be breaking down, so you do want to have diagnostic and maintenance, and the same that you want to have with your connected car, diagnostic, and with your printer you don't want your printer to break down before you actually are able to bring a maintenance truck rollout. So we do think that's important, and what we think is, when you think, for example, medical devices, specifically take the example of dental equipment, the guys who are making that dental equipment and the dentists have zero interaction. In fact, in that whole value chain, there are several players between dental equipment manufacturer and the dentist. And IoT will enable that dental equipment manufacturing company really gets connected to the very end user and understand how that equipment is used and really improve their product line management, as well as obviously the maintenance and diagnostic. So we think it's huge, we think it's important, we think it's much more difficult to figure out, and fewer companies have figured that out. I mean, many companies have figured out the first area that we talked about. And the last area is companies thinking themselves, saying, look, how would I change my business model so that I have a new business model, I have a platform, I have SaaS, I'm more a data company rather than hardware company, based on these value shifts that we discussed. So that is, I think, obviously the most difficult one is that one that companies have, and that's where hugely the cultural change is important. So how do they do it? So these are just some examples of how companies think about it and go about sort of changing their company to become more IoT. There are a couple of other examples that I will give you. But first is, if you look to the top left, IoT evangelization within the organization. And that is what, I think there has been a lot of progress done there in terms of executive team and board, but not yet in terms of, really going down the ranks into managers and directors and whatnot. And the manufacturing production guy. So there is like really, what is IoT? How does it apply? Is it real or not? And that there's a lot of work. A lot of companies. We work, for example, with a major multi-billion-dollar company in the US, industrial, where we actually created workshops for them and a series of newsletters just to get employees understand what IoT is, how they can apply it, because if you don't get that in first, it's just people don't know. I mean, this is really very different for majority of employees, and not for us who is sitting and we're technology people sitting in this room. Second is, the big question between what is to the right of this company-wide IoT strategic initiative and or business unit focus strategy and implementation roadmap. On company-wide, some of the companies, they think these are, again, very large companies. They say, you know what, I'm going to create an IoT central team. And these guys, you know, the person who they put on top of that business organization is usually an EVP. So it's not, you know, it's pretty high in the ranks, reports to someone who reports to the CEO. And really, they create a central organization for IoT with data scientists. Usually, it's between 10 to 15 people. And those guys try to figure out, again, what is IoT, you know, more in a more structural way, and also think about the piece which is the building blocks of IoT platform. What are the pieces we need? Do we centralize the IoT function or not? But some of the companies, what they've done is they sort of, somebody earlier said, think big, but implement small. I think it was Samsung, based on the question that I asked. And a lot of companies are approaching it that way, and they're doing acquisitions to do that. So how they do it, they may acquire, I give you example, Fortive or Danaher acquire 2 transportation, telematics, or IoT companies so that they can understand how does it work. Michelin, which is a tire company, bought also a telematics company out of Brazil. And when we asked them why, it was like, well, we just wanted to know how it works. I mean, they did pay $700 million. So they do pay a lot of money, but just to understand, just to bring the experience in-house. So some companies are doing it that way. Others are saying, okay, I'll take one of the business units and try to get them to move to IoT and experiment from there. But there are whole sets of a strategy that different companies are now deploying in order to get into that. I think, out of time now. So I'm going to stop here because there are a few more slides. And you know, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Sorry, mic here. Let's have a round of applause for her, and she will be around to answer questions if anybody has, but we are trying to keep on our timeline here. So this was gonna be our final plenary session of the day. So